Thank you. I think the August Exchequer returns demonstrated very clearly the huge public expenditure that has been necessarily entailed due to the pandemic. There were much needed and very welcome supports, additional supports for the health sector, for social protection and also for business supports. And like previous speakers, I want to see those supports continued. They're necessary to support public health, they're necessary to support people who have lost their income, and they're also necessary to support business through a very uncertain time. Could I also say that over the last few weeks in particular, nervousness has increased again among business community, among sectors that had maybe closed down or partially closed down, people who had hoped to reopen, to scale up their businesses again. So I think our statutory agencies and the Department of Business must be very conscious of the concerns out there among the business community, and those supports need to continue. Could I just say the substantial additional expenditure for education was very welcome as well, in ensuring that the million children and young adults got back to education at preschool, at primary, post-primary further education and third level, and we hope to see that continue. Could I also say that the July job stimulus package was necessary. It was impactful in a number of areas, and you take the whole area of housing, additional activity, substantial funding for the Voids programme as well, which is necessary to ensure that houses that are lying vacant, that are council housing stock, are brought back to habitable use. Could I also say that Minister Michael McGrath has spoken about the budget 2021 will be set in the context of COVID-19 and Brexit. And we know of and he outlined the necessity, as all of us in this House want to see, services protected and also services improved where possible. Cahill, I should have 13 minutes and it didn't start at that. Will you rectify? Fine, thank you, because I'm conscious. Could I also say, Minister McGrath also spoke about the National Recovery Fund, and he spoke about the National Recovery Plan. I have to say the government must ensure that in those measures, in those plans, that there's a clear emphasis on the need for regional balance. And I think the pandemic has shown one thing is, and my colleague Deputy Darragh Cleary referred to it earlier, it shows and it demonstrates that services don't have to be provided from our capital city or from our major urban conurbation centres. Some of the key services for the public were delivered from people living in very remote areas. There again, and it's an issue I've discussed with Minister Ryan, the urgent need to ensure that our broadband infrastructure is rolled out as rapidly as possible, because we know of the inadequate broadband in so many communities has made it extremely difficult for people to work from home or students to learn at home. So the phrase blended learning will be difficult for some students who are living in areas where the broadband infrastructure is not up to the standard that we need. I also mentioned that Minister McGrath spoke about Budget 2021 in the context of the pandemic and Brexit. Since 2015, a year before the British referendum, I've spoken in this House and numerous committees of this House about the disastrous impacts that Brexit would have on our country. I have had the privilege of representing since 1992 two border counties, Cavan and Monaghan, an area that stretches practically from the west coast, from Blacklion and Cavan near Bundoran on the Atlantic to Inniskeen near Dundalk on the east coast. And we have a huge land border with Northern Ireland. And I have to say, when that Brexit referendum result came about, it knocked the stuffing out of communities along the border. I have had the privilege of representing those communities in the bad days, prior to the peace process, prior to the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, and I have seen the huge improvements brought about as a result of the Good Friday Agreement. We have to ensure that there can be no diminution in the workings of the potential of the Good Friday Agreement, and it's so disheartening to see the nonsense once again in British politics, led by Mr Johnston and his Tory party. But it's heartening to see the lack of Hilary Benn MP and some other MPs who understand Ireland, and who, along with Deputy Sherlock and myself, we would have met at different committees over the past few years. And I want to pay tribute to those particular people who have championed the Irish interest and who understand the difficulties that will face our country if there's a no-deal Brexit as well. So we sincerely hope that Britain will step back from the brink, because I understand very well. I I represent communities where we are very interdependent with our neighbours north of the border. Thankfully, since 1998, businesses that had not a base in Northern Ireland and were only sited south of the border, now they have bases and businesses both sides of the border. Our economy has become so interdependent. So it's extremely important that there's no interruption to the way we go about our business model today. And I would say to An Taoiseach, to the Taoiseach and to the Minister for Foreign Affairs that they must ensure that that message is hammered home to the British day in, day out. And I welcome again the commitments of senior political figures in the United States as well in regard to what attitude they'll take to a possible trade deal with Britain if there's damage done to the Good Friday Agreement. Could you tell me, Cahill, how many minutes are left of my slot? That's not correct, is it? Yeah. Oh, 4 separate, perfect. Thank you, I didn't realise that. So I just want to say that we have to ensure that that message is given to the British every hour of the day, because it's not acceptable. Could I also just say, and I referred earlier to the need for an impetus to be given to greater regional balance. I have to say it has been disheartening. It has taken so long to roll out a proper broadband telecommunications right throughout our country. People dealing with air find it absolutely frustrating, and I'd love if Minister Ryan would talk to that company and ask them to give a proper service to their customers, the customers that are paying dear for those services. And I have to say, as Deputy Darragh Killeary spoke about earlier, he spoke about the need to upgrade our regional roads, our local roads, because in an area that I represent, Cavan, so many of our businesses that are small indigenous businesses, particularly in the food area, in engineering and construction, most of those enterprises are actually sited along local and regional roads, because we have had a very minute amount of our road network is national primary or national secondary. So I sincerely hope that Minister Ryan, in his negotiations at government for resources for his department for transport in 2021, would ensure that the needs of the non-national network are prioritised as well. Because if we are to have regional balance in our country, if we are to have a regional economic development in any balanced way, we have to ensure that the infrastructure of our rural counties is given investment at this time. The pandemic has demonstrated very clearly that everybody doesn't have to go to Dublin, to Galway, to Limerick, to Cork to work. So much of it can be done from home. It can be done from digital hubs in our towns, in our county towns, in our smaller towns. But if we are to keep people working in our smaller towns and villages, they have to get that necessary upgrade in infrastructure. Small investment will go so far in ensuring that our towns have that infrastructure to ensure that people can work from home. One thing that was mentioned earlier as well is, and I want to compliment as I did here during April and May, the officials in the Department of Social Protection in particular, and all our people in the HSE, the frontline workers, be they public service workers or private sector workers, who have done such a good job since early March, working in very challenging and difficult circumstances. Could I just say the Department of Social Protection, they were exceptional in getting payments out to people who needed it. And I know contacting officials late in the evening, on Saturdays and at the weekends in those local offices, as my own constituency staff did, Saturday after Saturday, late evening, there was always a person there to take a call, return an email, contact constituents who needed a payment, or a person who needed to be reassured that there would be a payment on the way to their post office or to their bank without delay. Because so many of us came across constituents who rang us and they'd say, "Brendan, where is the social welfare office in our county town? I never had reason to go to it. I need to go to it this time." So you had a huge amount of people, many hundreds and hundreds of thousands, accessing social welfare services who hadn't in the past. And I have to say, they were met with the utmost courtesy, cooperation and help from officials in the department. And I think it's very important to record our appreciation again of the work of those public servants in our civil service and in our public service in general, and also, of course, all frontline workers who continue to give a great service to our public.